Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Cantina Corner podcast. As always, we are at max capacity, so make sure you grab yourself a drink, grab yourself a seat, get cozy, get comfortable. We are getting into another good topic of discussion today, kind of a part two from last time. But prior to that, as always, this episode is sponsored by Rep Sports, proud owner of the Raise Energy drinks, where you can get fantastic products from them by using the discount code Cantina Corner. Gets you 15% off anything you buy from them at checkout. Highly recommend you check that out. And as always, make sure you like and subscribe our YouTube page. That way you can always get notifications. Hit that bell, hit all when you do that. So that way anything that we put up, you're going to know exactly when it goes live so that you can check it out and be the first to like and comment. And with that, let's get into our kind of part two of what we talked about last episode, which was very UFO heavy, regarding the June 1st drop that the government has from the 180-day window that our previous president, Donald Trump, gave them to disclose, UFOs or anything of the like. So we're
Disclosure Day.
Disclosure Date's D-Day. I like that. That's pretty good. UFO D-Day. But we kind of talked a little bit about Egyptians and how they might have been, related to anything alien related or gods, what have you, in the last episode. So we're kind of going into a part two. We're going to kind of go heavy into Egyptian stuff, maybe other cultures, anything that might be tied into stuff that we think or can talk about that have been possibly proven in history, facts, evidence, whatever. So we're going to kind of discuss that. So let us know what you think in the comments. But what is up, gentlemen? Are you ready to get into some Egyptian talk?
What it do?
Yep. Let's do it.
Good. I love the enthusiasm. And getting me so fucking fired up right now. Good. We're dead. But yeah, I was doing a lot of research as much as I could in between doing my college schoolwork, which is mind-numbing in itself. But I've been trying to look into more of this because I know Cody is always been very interested in this. Am I correct? You've always liked the whole things with the pyramids, kind of like we talked about before. That's like a big thing in history that you like digging into.
Yeah, it's just always been intriguing to me, just because we just don't know, even to this day, like why or how the pyramids were built and everything. So
yeah, and I know we were talking about, the correlation between what they built to what the Mayans built, the same time period and all that stuff. But I wanted to kick this off because I was doing was trying to do research on the stuff that people talk about, like, we mentioned before, the History Channel and their Ancient Alien series, which is on season 25 or whatever, that they go into. And sometimes it gets a little crazy.
It's not even ancient aliens at this point. It's modern day aliens now. That's the name of it, dude.
Well, shit, I was watching one clip and it was like a 3.5 minute preview of the season. And they were talking about how the god or the pharaoh god Osiris could have been like a robot. So, I mean, I don't know what validity that has, but they literally they showed like a CGI animation of like him being put back together as like a robot and then like coming back to life. And I was like,
Mecha Godzilla.
Mecha Osiris, dude.
Mecha Osiris. But I was very fascinated in the people that like to discredit this stuff, just completely debunk it and say it doesn't exist. There's no truth to it. Call it pseudo archaeology, if you will. And one thing I wanted to pick both of your brains on, because the main video that I watched that stuck out with me most was a TED Talk by a archaeologist named Sarah Koenig. And she had, how long was this? 12 minutes and 20 seconds, where she was basically, I'm going to read you the first couple sentences in the YouTube description, which kind of describes what she was getting at, but there's like a whole long paragraph. I won't bore you with that, but the description of the video says, did the aliens build the Egyptian pyramids? Did survivors from the lost continent of Atlantis invent hieroglyphic writing? And then it follows it up by just saying no. And then she goes on to basically talk about how it's pseudo-archaeology, how none of this can be proven. And the one thing that I found interesting, because this was posted November 3rd of 2020, she ties a lot of pseudo-archaeology and people who want to tie all this stuff to white supremacy, racism, and discrimination. And this is why I want to get your opinions on this, because her reasoning for saying that was, how people say the Romans were able to build what they wanted to, like the Colosseum and this and that. And people, from her point of view, said, aliens didn't come down and help them, but they helped the Egyptians, which basically she was pulling racism by saying, oh, it was the Europeans that were able to do this, but not the non-Europeans, not the non-whites. And so she was tying a lot of this stuff into, and it sounded more political. I mean, do you think any of that even has any merit to be in a discussion as far as like talking about this?
Well, it's massively
No.
stupid on her part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we know what the Romans had tool-wise, and for the ability to build these things, as far as we know, there's nothing to prove that Egyptians had the capability of building a pyramid at the time. There's absolutely
who
zero
knows?
proof.
There could have been stuff that the Romans might have gotten from aliens and stuff too, like aqueducts to bring water in from like miles and miles away to build big cities like they did. They were one of the first civilizations to build cities of that magnitude like that to keep fresh water coming in. Who's to say they didn't talk to some aliens to get that technology too? We don't know.
Yeah, and let's be real, the Romans took a lot of shit from the Egyptians.
Yeah.
Through the various wars that they've had, and even like I know you've been to Jordan and Petro. There's actually that's the oldest known like water not really like filtering system, but like literally because they're in the desert, they had a system where the rain would fall off the mountain, and they literally found like little cubbies where the water would flow into these two giant, like they almost look like giant stone bathtubs, and that's how they would hold their water for the city. They actually use like the rainwater to come down and build a system to do that. That's like one of the earliest known systems of like water for that. Like, so yeah, I don't think anybody's saying that whites could do this and Egyptians can't. That's honestly tells me that everything in that video was just a lazy take.
It pretty much
extremely.
is, and when you read the comments on it, like just to kind of give some,
it honestly proves to me that she doesn't know her own history, because the Romans did steal a lot of their archaeologist shit from Egyptians.
Yeah, like one person said on here, it was a good start, and then it drifted into a strange direction because she just went into a lot of politics with it instead of actually focusing on like the factual archaeological evidence of things. Being an archaeologist herself, and she was talking about going on archaeological digs and excavations in within the Mayan culture and seeing things there, and she keeps talking about how she's upset that even people in the Mayan culture, when they wanted to sit down and talk with her by finding out why she was there, she was excited that they'd be wanting to talk about like the normal stuff. But then they started bringing up like specifically the Ancient Alien show and all these different things, and she's like, it's very dangerous in society that when you talk about stuff like this, it's dangerous for the learning, and how it's completely fake, it's fabricated, there's no proof on it, and all these different things. And but
no
she
proof
wasn't
against it.
And yeah, but that's the thing, is she didn't provide anything against it. She was just talking about
I know she didn't. She just made it racist to think that way.
Sounds like she's classically trained in critical race theory. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and I mean, you read the comments on a lot of people that just don't understand. Like one person said on here, they said at one time in the world, quantum physics was a pseudoscience, and now it's legit. So I mean, you can't say something is completely debunked and fake without, I mean, things can change over time.
Well, you can when we've been lied to about history our entire lives growing up. I mean, there's been a narrative on history since we've been growing up. I mean, Christopher Columbus to us is the person who founded America. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Not even close. Not even relatively close.
Yeah. And it just, I was, because the video is titled Aliens and Archaeology. Why do we get history wrong on purpose? And I was like, okay, like maybe she was going to have a debate or talk about, like what's the differences and this and that, but it was just complete discrediting. And I find it hard to believe when we've, been talking about this in the last episode and now this, it's like, how can you just immediately discredit it without providing any type of like intellectual rebuttal?
I'd like to see her thoughts on Göbekli Tepe, or however it's pronounced.
Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli, yeah.
She's just doing it just to get that little niche of a market and make some money off it. That's all it is. That's why she's fine with being that lazy about it and that intellectually dishonest. There's a niche market that she knows she could tap into, no problem, if she just presents this narrative of white supremacy bullshit or whatever the hell, and then she'll make money off it.
Yeah.
And then that stuff, unfortunately, right now is like very popular to pin a lot of things or view a lot of things through that lens. So unfortunately, you have a lot of con artists and grifters right now that are just tapping into that, that it taps into emotions and feelings of people too, anger and stuff, which is a very powerful emotion and blinds people's thought. It's stupid.
Yeah, and that brings me to my next question I want to ask you guys is like how do you handle conversations, or like what's your thought process, or what do you think of people who just debunk stuff like this and don't really, they just discredit it from like the get-go. They don't do further research into it. They just look at it as like it's crazy or conspiracy theory and all that stuff when we're dealing with these ancient civilizations that may or may not have been contacted from, beings from another place, such like the Egyptians or the Mayans. Like, how do you handle that, like within your brain? Like, what would you say?
Want some like evidence and stuff. I don't want to just keep sitting here and defaulting to like white supremacy and things like that. And because I'm fine with people debunking things, I got no problems with that. That's how we advance things. Is we have a right way of doing something, then for lack of a better term, it gets debunked, and we find a better process. So just whatever you want to call it, debunking or not. So it's fine doing it, but if you're gonna do it, you want to bring facts and stuff and legitimately try and persuade somebody, not just knock down somebody's point of view and say, "Oh, you're saying this means white supremacy," or some crap like that. Without just bring facts and stuff. I don't know. It's when I hear arguments like that, especially nowadays. Like there might have been a point in time where I would give it some credence and think a little bit more.
Yeah.
But nowadays, with how it is, like I said, how popular it is, when I hear stuff like that, I automatically just turn that person off. I'm like, they got nothing of value that I want to hear.
Yeah, especially when you look. I mean, that video he said was November 2020, right around election time, political as hell, no substance whatsoever.
Yeah.
She had nothing to back up her state. That's my thing. Like Nick just said, if you're bringing something to the table to back up your statement, I will hear you out. I don't even like. I think it's fucked up for even if you're in the camp of believing in aliens and any of that to just believe wholeheartedly that this is what it is, and there's absolutely nothing that'll change my mind on that. Because that's a terrible way to go about it as well. I think you should have an open mind and explore both sides to try to seek the truth. I think the truth is the only thing that really matters at the end of the situation.
Ask questions and don't shut stuff down immediately because it doesn't agree with your viewpoint.
And I just tend to find that people who are trying to prove this new history of whether it's like lost civilizations or extraterrestrials visiting us back in the ancient times, like people do more research and put more work and effort into finding that out than people do debunking it.
I would agree.
Yep.
So like Graham Hancock's my number one example. That dude's like one of my heroes.
Yeah.
I mean that dude, he even says all the time, like, don't talk about the pyramids until you go there. Like you will get a different understanding of what it is, because even him, who was kind of like in the same boat as we are, believing that there's more to the story, it was like a total different experience just being there in the presence of like the pyramids and just the ominous feel of just something more, like just being in front of it. So
well, yeah, I mean, even like you said, when I was, because I did go to Petra when I was there, and even some of the stuff there, when they're showing it through a like religious lens, if you will, to me, I was also thinking of, the possibility of like other beings, aliens, different stuff like that, because the structures and things that I was like walking into or seeing in person, I was like, it gives you a different perspective than just seeing a picture or learning about it or talking about it, just like you said. And I can say that from experience. Like I was just blown away. I will be honest, I was like 50-50. I'm not religious, so I don't think there was a religious tie to it. I was like, people could do this, but like some of the shit I saw, I was just like, this stuff is so intricate. Something's weird about it.
Yeah.
Something has to be bigger than like, it's just, oh yeah, people just made this. And I'm like, okay, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Even like carving, they carved their temples into the side of mountains, like incredible skill with tools that, nowadays
they say suppose they just
precision.
had hammer and chisels.
Yeah,
you're telling me people did that with hammer and chisels?
Yeah, and it's crazy too. Like I know, like I forget the name of the temple there, Adam, the one that's in Indiana Jones. They actually have like there's a series of tunnels and stairs that go up to the side of the temple, and they explain how they carved it from top down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy, dude. And you can still see like they carved it to climb back up to the ladder. They literally carved in like a rock climbing wall on the side. So when they were done with the level, they would just climb back up and then just walk down the stair. I mean, it's crazy architect to think about, like how they figured that out. It's in the middle of nowhere.
I'm gonna have to pull up the pictures I took of that place because I have pictures of those exact things you're talking about. Because when we were asking people there, like I saw those footsteps and I'm like, you mean to tell me they literally just put their feet in there and just climbed all the way up the side of this thing? And they're like, yeah, that's what they did. I was like, God, because when you see the picture of me standing in front of it, it is massive. Yeah. I mean, massive. You fall from that, you're done. Yeah. You're dead.
That's one of those things too. I always think about, like, I mean, obviously it's in Indiana Jones, and obviously with the research we've done in the history, just desensitizing people to certain things. Like, it honestly, I mean, you can call this stupidity on my own part, but like, not until I really grew up did I know that was like a real place, like really like carved into the side of a mountain. And, you know, I don't know. It's just interesting.
It is. It's very, very weird. And I mean, even some of those places, like when I walked into it, I got a weird vibe. Like it was just like something about it. Some of it was unsettling because you go into certain areas that I'm not saying from it's like haunted, but like darker areas or certain caverns, like you get this weird like aura feeling about it. You're just like something's funky.
And weird energy or something.
Huh?
What do you say, Nick?
I was just saying like weird energy or something.
Yeah. It's just something's coming off of it that's weird, and then people say, "Oh, well, that's because this is religious and God and that and that." And I'm like, okay, well, I don't believe that, so I'm looking at it from a different perspective. But it's crazy. Huh?
Penitent man.
What's that?
Penitent man kneels before God. Ninja.
Yeah, now I caught it. But also remember the Transformers were there too, so we did have robots at one point in Petra.
They used to be on my street, dude.
That's true.
I used to have Transformers on my street, bro.
Seriously?
God doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah. No, thank God. That family might have even moved out by now. That was so long ago. That shit was so annoying.
Did I even ask?
Halloween was the worst.
It was for Halloween. His neighbor would build these massive Transformers in his front yard.
They were sweet. They were awesome, but just people couldn't handle themselves around them. We pretty much shut the street down every year on Halloween.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then I was also thinking when you brought up Indiana Jones, because it was another thing that was talked about in some art or some videos I watched where they talk about, how in society we glorify these different things for entertainment when it comes to ancient civilizations and alien tides and stuff. If you look at the last Indiana Jones movie, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, do you believe in? Yeah, and that's what I was about to ask. Like, what is your belief into like something like that?
I don't know, man. Those skulls are weird.
When I was in DC at the end of 2019, I wanted to go to the Smithsonian because they supposedly have one of the crystal skulls. But when I was looking it up, I think they had it sent somewhere for like cleaning or restoration or something. I guess it goes through every so often. So I didn't get a chance to go see it. But like, I didn't know at first when we were going that the Smithsonian even had one of those.
Yeah.
And then when I found out, I was like, I want to fucking go because that would be sweet to see.
Those are weird.
Yeah, they're very weird. And I mean, that movie was shit. But the premise of that
bad.
I mean,
it was bad for Indiana Jones. It wasn't that bad.
Well, that's how I'm looking at it.
I'm a critic.
I don't think I did see that one.
I mean, it's worth at least a watch because they do supposedly have a fifth one coming out. But I mean, it wasn't as good as the other ones, and that's why I say it's shit. Like, it's not a horrible movie, no. But the whole premise of the Crystal Skulls was what got me interested in that movie mainly. And it's those skulls are so strange. Like, I'm gonna pull a picture. I haven't looked at them in a hot minute.
Yeah, I forget what his name was, but Joe Rogan had a dude on. He's like
Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, he's like a crystal.
And Dan Aykroyd's dude. His vodka company. He bases it after those skulls, and it's like the jars he uses are like modeled after it and stuff. That's because I was watching or listening to it one day at work, and I was like, "Oh, Dan Aykroyd's on. I'll just throw it on." And they started talking about that, and that's what got me interested in it too. I was like, because Dan Aykroyd just started just naming off all the stuff about it. Him and Joe Rogan. I mean, you know how Joe Rogan is on a lot of subjects, so just hearing them talk, just hearing them talk about it, I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I didn't know. I had heard stuff about it, but I didn't really know nothing about it. And then
Yeah.
after that, I started looking into it. I was like, this is
There's
sweet.
supposedly no remnants of chisel marks. Like they're just like
Yeah.
there.
I was like, just lasered out of just
Pure
crystal.
It's
Like
fucking weird, dude.
It's crazy.
Yeah, give me some archaeology that'll explain that, you dumb bitch.
Not to mention, if it's in a place like the Smithsonian, like there's some real shit to that. Like they wouldn't put it in a place like that if there wasn't something interesting for it to be there. I mean, of all places.
Right.
And I mean, is there anything else kind of like that that you guys know about? Because I was trying to find like more obscure things.
That was a
Obviously, we
big one,
talked.
dude.
Well, hit me with it,
There's
because
a
that's
big
what I'm
one.
asking.
The Mummy. Imhotep.
Okay.
Imhotep is the architect of the pyramid. The pyramids, like, he's a real person. And
I actually didn't know
he's,
that.
He's like a main villain in the Mummy and the Mummy Returns and all that. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Imhotep was like a normal, I don't know what you would call him, fisherman or normal dude in like a small village in Egypt, but he was like a priest and a stonemason and shit. And he's the one who like, this is where this shit's gonna get weird.
Mhm.
So he's like one of those guys. He supposedly had like a vision or went on like a spiritual journey, which I'm about to touch on. I was gonna bring this up later, but this
He dropped some DMT.
This is exactly where I'm going with this. Yes.
Ah,
Oh,
okay.
shit.
Literally, like, you know how much like
I could see that.
Graham Hancock and all these guys talk about like DMT and ayahuasca and all that, like sending you into different places and stuff, and like having like real experiences.
Yeah.
And like supposedly Imhotep had I forget what god it was. Some god visited him and told him that he was just gonna flood the Nile. And Imhotep went to the Pharaoh and told the Pharaoh and stuff, and the Nile started to flood. And that's when I forget what Pharaoh was too, but I'm terrible at this. The Pharaoh started doing like normal sacrifices to the gods and stuff. And the flooding receded. And so the Pharaoh was the one who like he promoted, I forget what the name of it is. It's like the high priest or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the dude who directly under the Pharaoh. Like that's what he promoted Imhotep to. So he like got shot up the ranks.
Speaker of the house.
Yeah, and this Pharaoh like wanted like a proper burial, a different burial than any Pharaoh, because he saw himself as the savior of Egypt or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's where Imhotep actually built the first pyramids, not actually in Gaza or Giza, whatever you guys want to call it.
Giza. Gaza's the place we talked about in that other video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Giza. But yeah, he built a pyramid there, and that was that guy's like tomb. I forget what the city is. It starts with an S. I'm terrible at this. It's like right next to Giza. Can you look it up, Adam? So I don't sound like a retard.
What pyramid was that? Was that weird looking one? The
Yeah, it's like a step one. It almost looks like a Mayan one.
I know which one. Yeah, the stepped one. I know which one you're talking about. I can't think of the name of the city.
It was the step pyramid of I don't know how to pronounce this. DJOSER, like Djoser.
Oh yeah, Djoser. That's exactly right. Yeah.
The step pyramid of like Djoser is the oldest pyramid in Egypt. It was built about 4,700 years ago. And it said the planning of the pyramid has been attributed to Imhotep, a vizier who would later be deified for his accomplishments.
Yeah, he became like the god of architect or some shit like that. But see, I got all this knowledge in my head. It's just getting it out correctly.
Born out.
You're like my personal Jamie. You're fact checking me on that. But yeah, he did that. But supposedly, he says that Imhotep says that he came up with the pyramid because the gods came to him in a vision and like explained to him how to build them. Now he explained that as a spiritual vision, and my thought process is, for what like me and Nicholas know about ancient civilizations and how much like ayahuasca and all that shit was like just used,
a big part of their like religious life and all that.
A huge part. I truly believe that like that was something like he had like a trip, and he had that experience and he came back and knew like, okay, this is what I need to do and this is how I need to do it. So that goes to the whole thing of like interdimensional beings and shit, and like, is there something
Clockwork
in
Elves.
DMT and all? Yeah, Clockwork Elves, like Alex Jones says. But I mean, he's been writing a lot, and he's been saying that for a long time. So
Yeah.
wouldn't
I
shock
mean,
me
there's
either.
been how many things have we watched too where these people kind of pretty much confirm not
Yeah,
necessarily clockwork elves, but some type of elves and stuff they go and see in these different dimensions or whatever it is. Like it just gives you the right pair of glasses to see these things pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah.
That's all this stuff really
I
does.
think I can't remember who. I don't think it was Graham Hancock, but it was somebody else was explaining that there was like 50 people who took this drug, and they literally all had the same trip. They all saw the same thing, and
It was I think Joe Rogan and somebody on where they were talking about because I think it was Joe
was it?
Rogan who was saying that all these people had the same experience,
Yeah, which
the
is
same
not
thing.
normal when you do drugs. Like you could
No.
have a bad trip, I could have a great trip. Like, and this many people had the same exact. They all saw the same thing. It was like a miniature creature, and they all followed it into the woods and stuff, and they all
Fuck that.
had the same shit. That's weird. That's
That
It
is
is
weird.
really
and it's
weird.
like, is that something there that clicks into like a different dimension that opens, like we talk about all the time, we don't use all of our brains. Does it open up something to where we can see through some of the bullshit and maybe see things that we
Hmm.
normally couldn't? And like how like mushrooms and all these psychedelics that used to be so used through history in all these civilizations,
Yeah.
all of a sudden are demonized around the world. It's like it
Yep.
was like a collective agreement to stop people from taking this and having their consciousness open up and
Expand your mind.
seeing things they shouldn't.
Or
It gets you
questioning things
questioning
at
things.
least.
Right.
Yep, that's
Exactly.
exactly what it does. That's exactly what it
Right.
does. I mean, look, Steve Jobs. That's how he created the iPhone. When he went
Yeah.
and did a spiritual journey out in was it like India or something like
India,
that?
yeah, I think it was India.
And then came back and he created the iPhone. And it's like that's when you look at the cell phones we had at the time and go to an iPhone like that. It's like that's a
Yeah.
fucking crazy jump. Like it's a lot of people like that. Yeah, just talk about the same things. They go on these spiritual journeys or these trips, and they just come back with this knowledge that's just crazy
Look at
weird
Bruce
shit.
Wayne, dude. Went on a spiritual trip in the mountains. Came
Yup.
back Batman.
Shit
All facts.
happens. It's not a joke.
No, it's not.
Saw the documentary.
Wasn't the Scarecrow trying to do that to people too, but it was just causing nightmares.
Well, yeah, that's what it does. It shows you your fear. It makes you overcome your fears.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, and we even talked about that in the last episode, the first part of this, when we were talking about how Cody, you were saying, the phone was invented in our time, technology, and how we just
Yeah.
went in such a fast jump, and I didn't know that Steve Jobs had gone on a spiritual journey before the iPhone. I honestly didn't know that, and I've watched documentaries and his two renditions of movies they made on him doing that and stuff, but I don't remember that part of it. But I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of like very creative people even today go on like isolation and spiritual trips. I remember I watched a interview. It was Jared Leto, who, I mean, you could say he's pretty talented. I mean, he's got his own
Yeah.
band or whatever. He's pretty creative, I'll say that.
Definitely.
And he was talking about how right before COVID, literally, like COVID started while he was on an isolation trip. Like it was 14 different people for 2 weeks, I think he said. No cell phones, nothing. And he's like, I came back and found out COVID happened. He's like, I had no idea. But it was just interesting, like when you put that all these high people with creative abilities and stuff go on these spiritual trips, if you want to call them that. I don't think they're necessarily religious, but put you more in tune with your spirit. Which,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
even saying that, there are people that are somewhat medians. I mean, are those people that just have a slight tap into that at all times? I know one, and I'm pretty skeptical on that stuff. But
Yeah.
I like, just the way I am, I'm very open-minded to listening to it, and like just hearing the stories on like she's literally found dead bodies, like absolutely no, like they explain her a closed case and stuff. Like she works with police department in her area. And she's found a few like just totally missing closed case bodies just by looking at the case and just feel it's weird. I can't even explain it. It's so fucking weird. Like I can't even fathom it. You know, like how's that possible? But I mean, it's just crazy.
There are those people that just vibrate a little bit differently than other people.
That's what I'm wondering. Like, is that just something that like they tap into what maybe like ayahuasca and all that stuff opens your mind up to? Do they just have that innate ability to just not like fully tap into it, but just see through like the weeds and stuff and just see certain things? Because she always explains how it's just like images and stuff, or you know, a few words and stuff that she can get. Like, it's weird stuff.
It is. I mean, it's what do they call that in most cultures? They call that like your third eye.
Yeah.
Like it's just the ability to see past or see through everything or see more than what we can with just our own two eyes.
And I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of scam artists that do that shit, but
absolutely.
I mean, you go throughout history, there are people that play that role. I mean, in civilizations, I mean, there's people that have that innate ability that are talked about all throughout different cultures. So it's, I mean, there has to be something there for certain people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we were talking initially in this thread of discussion here about the Emotep thing, one thing I wanted to bring up, as far as people and you know going off different journeys or seeing things differently. I mean, the other people in the Egyptian god list, if you will, a lot of in the carvings they have, you know how you see pharaohs or different people as like a dog head, or they use the scarab beetle as like a god to them, and they've got the scarab beetle all over, like all these different things. It kind of reminded me when I was bringing up last episode about the possibility of creatures as gods and, you know, beings from other places. And a lot of these, you know, gods that they had, like Osiris and all these different people, were like half human, half something else.
Yeah.
And it's like, why would they pick to do that? Like, most people would say, oh, it was just an art style. That's just what they did when they were making, you know, everything on the walls and chiseling it in. It was an art style. But I just can't believe that it would be something that simple if it was someone so important.
This like ridiculously advanced civilization just on a whim decides to just paint this stuff on their walls or carve into their walls. Yeah, it's a little weird. It is a little weird of an explanation.
And why would they pick a insect of all things, an insect that would be a god to them? And I was watching a documentary on like the dung beetle with the Egyptians and it being a god. They were talking about how the dung beetle, you know, when it rolls its ball, it's always in a straight line, no matter what it has to overcome. It goes through a straight line. And scientists over the years have been able to figure out that the direction it always goes, more than not, even when it's going that straight line, is always in the path of where the Milky Way is in the stars. Like it uses the light of the Milky Way, from what they said, to always go that direction. How is an insect that's also being worshipped as a god by the Egyptians always going off of something in the stars when it's this little thing on the bottom of the planet? Like all of that together just seems very odd to me.
Yeah, it's really weird. I didn't know that about dung beetles, but it makes sense that they would take that as a god then, with how tapped into like all that stuff they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they even had a god that they were showing images of that was like, you know, where they showed like the dog face and the human body. There was a god that had a scarab head. Like it was just the insect as its head, and then it was a normal torso of a human. And it's very strange that something that's following the path of the stars always, and then is attributed as a god to another thing. It's like, is there something from space that we're not missing? Like that just seems very cool. It's very coincidental. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, like, could there be like just basically what we were just talking about, like where a thing where one day they were just tripping face, and a dung beetle came by and they like communicated with it.
That's true.
You know, where they thought they communicated with it and they just immediately turn it into a god. Or I mean, that's far stretch, but yeah, it could be that they were just studying. I mean, all they did was study the earth and the stars. I mean, that's what they did. So it wouldn't surprise me if they picked up on that, or somebody picked up on, you know, this thing's always going like not necessarily true north, but I mean, when you look at When you look at like how the Great Pyramid is, there's just no way that thing's man-made. At least without help or massive
You don't
tools that we don't know about that existed back then.
you don't think it was always that story of the just ridiculous slaves that they had building it?
No, because there's literally, like Graham Hancock says when he was there, the King's Chamber, there's 5 chambers above it.
Mm-hmm.
There's 35-ton beams, 350 feet in the air, holding the five like corridors above the tomb. There's 5 corridors above the tomb, and each corridor has 2 35-ton beams. And he was like, he's like, there's literally nothing in that time period to almost the beginning of our modern civilization that would have the ability to handle that weight. And he's like, you can't really say they pushed it up a ramp because you would need a very fucking long ramp that was literally the size of the pyramid itself. And it would have to be at less than a 10-degree angle because you can't pull 35 tons up more than a 10-degree angle. Like the way he broke it down, it was like, yeah, this is like literally there's absolutely no explanation on how these beams got 350 feet in the air.
That's strange.
Yeah. I think there's some type of lost technology or something that they had.
There has
And
to
I do think that Göbekli Tepe could be some type of like
Yeah.
Well, the theory on it is possibly well, like even Graham Hancock says, it's a place of possible transfer of that technology, just the way it lines up and all that. And I could definitely see that. There's what's the place in Florida? Coral Castle, I believe it's called,
Coral.
in Florida, where the guy who built it says he used the same technology that ancient Egyptians did, which is basically using the magnetism of the earth to vibrate these like earth. Yeah, I don't know what the hell I'm saying. But he said he found this the same thing they were doing to use those waves to vibrate these gigantic ton like boulders and just cubes, whatever, and stack them up. And he built it himself, supposedly. Now that's more of a modern day example where I could possibly see that maybe being some type of scam or something. But there's other instances of things like that too, where they talk about they use something with the magnetism of the earth to help move this stuff. And it is definitely more plausible than the way they try and describe it.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
Just their mathematics alone.
How advanced it was for
way advanced, dude. Like, I do honestly believe that the transfer of knowledge or something. I mean, especially like where the pyramid's built. Like the pyramid is like some crazy astronomical number. It's like 0.036 something off of true north. Like they built that thing almost true north, which I was actually reading today that they think the only reason it's no longer true north is because of the vibration and the spinning and the rotation of the earth, that it's actually pushed it off just a little bit. But like they're like, when it was built, it was probably dead on, which is fucking, I mean, how the fuck do you even measure that back then? And then the fact that if you take from the very tip of the pyramid and you go and you split off and you go all the way around the world, each one going in a different direction, it literally covers more landmass than any other point on Earth. Which is crazy. So it's literally like, there's people who think like this is literally the center of the Earth. Like it's literally central of the Earth. It's literally lined up with the equator and what's the other one? Fucking, I forget what it is. The longitude and latitude.
Oh, longitude and latitude.
Yeah, but it's the equator is like the center. Whichever one goes north and south, and the equator, literally they cross at the fucking Great Pyramid.
The prime meridian.
Sure, I don't remember what it's called, so I'm just gonna trust you on that.
I'm looking it up right now. It is, prime meridian goes from north to south, North Pole to South Pole, and then you got the equator, which goes the opposite direction.
Literally cross at the Great Pyramid.
That's weird.
That's fucked up. The insane accuracy alone.
Yeah. Not to mention too,
you think about to explain to me that.
They're supposedly hauling these blocks around too for great distances from these quarries that were like
500
miles away.
kilometers to be exact.
And when they fit them together, and this is one part, this is like in the first season of Ancient Aliens where it was still pretty like the stuff they were presenting to you made a lot of sense. And they go through and like it was either the first or second episode of that season. They're talking about how exact those blocks are fitting together. The tolerances are extremely tight. And I mean, I've only ever seen tolerances that tight when I worked in a machine shop with CNC machines, where you're literally half of a thousandth. That's 0.0005 within like a tolerance. That shit's tight as fuck. You can't slide papers in between it. Like for each one of those blocks to be that exact, and then be hauled like for miles away, and then hoisted up and all that, like it's just insane. They had to have some type of technology more than what they're saying they had. There's no way. Like
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of people who think the Sphinx is older than the pyramid.
I'm one of those people. I absolutely do. They say what conventional history or whatever puts it at like 1200 BC or some shit like that. Like, and I was telling you the one dude, that Robert Schott guy, he, a geologist, went in there and studied it, and he's looking at the water erosion marks, and they're all vertical. Horizontal ones would be like, you know, weathering of like just like sea level and stuff rising and falling, but these are horizontal. And so he's talking about the rainfall that would have to happen over a prolonged period of time for those kind of marks to occur.
Yep.
And that type of rainfall was present in Egypt around 12,000 years ago, right around that Younger Dryas period that like Graham Hancock talks about and all that. And he's like, so that right there, the weathering on the Sphinx with this shows evidence that it's at least 12,000 years old, which puts the Egyptian civilization so much further back.
If the Egyptians built it.
If they were even the ones to do that.
I am falling under that category of believing that Atlantis like legitimately was there, and I think the Sphinx was kind of like the first mark of that area being significant. Personally.
Yeah.
I could absolutely see something like
honestly, that. To go to your point, Adam, the Sphinx is kind of like a human on a lion's body. That could be where the, you know, obsession with half human, half animal things came with the Egyptian culture. It could have came from the Sphinx itself.
It could have. And I actually brought up real quick, because I want to continue on this. I brought up what you were talking about as far as like the weird placement of that pyramid. Obviously, it says that it's a geographical like phenomenon because it's literally on the exact longest line of latitude and the exact longest line of longitude at the center of the planet. It says, according to experts, the Great Pyramid is the most accurately aligned structure ever created by human beings. It is said that the pyramids face true north with a mere 3/60th of a degree of error. And it said, obviously, that, you know, when it was initially raised, it was precisely aligned. And then, you know, over time, geographically, it was shifted a little bit. But yeah, it's crazy.
I didn't make that up, bro.
And
it even says right here, too, says, I believe, because this is from an author who's also writing about this, too. This is from his perspective. He said, I believe this latitude positioning is proof that it was constructed by an advanced ancient civilization. I believe the pyramids weren't tombs, but machines that generated energy by breaking water into oxygen long before the pharaohs. Over 100 shafts cut into the limestone bedrock over the Giza Plateau brought in water from the River Nile. Why they were creating energy? Who knows?
There's the one set of hieroglyphics in there or whatever that shows them holding like what looks like a giant light bulb.
Yeah.
Really weird. It's very similar to what a light bulb looks like.
Yeah, there's Egyptian depictions on their, you know, walls and tabs that look exactly like a Tesla coil that I've seen videos on where they were talking about, I mean, from like what they were describing with that and the sun and all that, and it looks almost just exactly like the fucking thing.
Yeah. Oh,
now one could say that Tesla
was obsessed with them.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. You could say that Tesla modeled it after them, or vice versa, or whatever. But it's very interesting.
But you can't say vice versa because Tesla came off way after.
Well,
I understand what you're saying.
Could be a reincarnation. You never know.
That's true.
Time travel.
He was supposedly from Venus, according to the CIA. So
yeah,
there you go. But I mean, I didn't know that about being at the exact center of the planet.
Yeah, yeah.
That's weird.
That
is
like my
weird.
number one. That's my number one thing when people say it's man-made. It's just I think that is statistically impossible.
Yeah, and I mean, the only argument I can see people saying is like, oh well, someone developed the latitude and longitude after that, and they just happened to make it so that would be the center, or for some reason, and it's like bullshit. I couldn't see that happening.
Here's the other thing: why in ancient history does everything significant pretty much happen like within that bubble, like from there to like Jerusalem, like everything surrounding religion, everything happens in that little bubble, the Red Sea. Like, I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all.
Yeah, but then people like us sitting here discussing the possibility of something somewhere else. That's crazy. It's like, but everything else happened here, and we're all and there's tons of people on this planet that believe in a big man upstairs. You can't tell what the fuck are we talking about here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole thing. The Romans and the Vatican seized all of Egyptian. What was that? Was that about? I think it was Cleopatra, was it not? It was around that time period where the Romans started taking everything.
Yeah.
And their records and stuff was Cleopatra and all that shit went down.
I mean, one of the worst things that could have probably ever happened just for humanity too itself was when the Library of Alexandria burned down. Exactly. That supposedly had so much records. When I think about that, it's like that to me symbolizes what it seems like the Vatican could have in their basement. Just that wealth of knowledge of just history and things that have happened.
There's no question in my mind the Romans took everything before it was burnt down. Like everything of importance.
They were plunderers.
Yeah,
they were conquerors and plunderers. That is what they did. Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, what did that just got passed down? I mean, was it Caesar? Caesar was part of the Old Testament shit, wasn't he?
Like around then, yeah, he was around about then. Yeah,
I mean, when they basically implemented their version of the Bible and decided what was going in and what wasn't. I mean, they literally, like, most people don't know that they literally decided what was going in and what was going out of the Bible. To form a religion. It's fucked up.
That's what when Adam was asking us on the one podcast, what was a time in history we'd like to go back to, or one event. That was when I was talking about I'd love to sit in on one of those councils where they got together and just were like, they shared their thoughts on each book of the Bible and were like, let's include this one. Somebody's got objections to it or something, and they're just sitting there hashing out. It's like, I would love to just be a fly on the wall there and just hear that conversation, because that's one of the most defining things of just humans since then has been the Bible.
You know what that reminds me of, though? I forget which Harry Potter it is. I think it might be the Goblet of Fire. I don't know. I don't even know if that's the name of it. When Dumbledore and him go back in time and they're watching the trial from like nobody can see them, but they're watching the trial. That's what that just reminded me of. I don't know why.
That's kind of what I could picture in my head too. Like them sitting around in a big hall or whatever that.
And you're sitting there like, these fucking people.
They have no idea what they're about to do to humanity.
Yeah. I don't know why every time someone says the Goblet of Fire, I just think of that one. You should put your name in the Goblet of Fire. He's just joking about, did you? It makes me laugh every time. But I was actually looking up that stuff about Cleopatra and the Romans. And
nice you doing your research now during the podcast, dude.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, yeah,
I like
I'm
it.
I'm bringing up current stuff. Like it was like it says right here, Cleopatra was soon to become the queen of Egypt, the richest kingdom in all of Mediterranean. Mm-hmm. With Caesar, already notorious for his sexual energy, the two became lovers almost immediately. The following year, Caesar returned home in 46 BC and was named dictator of Rome. So I can see how them becoming, and obviously I can do more reading and whatnot and figure out exactly what happened, by history standards.
We gave you the synopsis.
Yeah, but I could see where he would then take that shit and do everything like that and use that to his advantage.
Which, by the way, I should point out, there was an excavation. Is that what you'd call it? And a girl actually thinks she's located Cleopatra's tomb.
That'd be interesting.
Really?
It's like, I forget what city it's in, but it's near Alexandria. But it's a few miles away from Alexandria. But her digging license ran out, and then fucking COVID hit.
Oh, that shit. So I remember you were telling me about this. That's right.
I don't remember I don't remember seeing if she got it back or if she's going to dig. I think digging season starts soon.
It says right here, Martinez's team has been digging for 14 years. She's unearthed exciting artifacts linked to Cleopatra at Taposiris Magna.
Taposiris, that's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, an ancient temple outside of Alexandria, Egypt. It says the ancient Egyptians speak to us through their tombs. She says, if I discover her tomb, many myths about her will be unveiled. And that was back in December of last year.
Yeah. So
I find it a weird coincidence that all that happened, because I remember something about that in the news about like she thought she found it, and then it was just like boom, like all this stuff culminated to where she couldn't do anything more with it.
maybe that's why
And what are we
COVID was
trying to-
released, dude.
What are you trying to say, dude? Yeah, you trying to weave a conspiracy here, Adam? I like it, dude.
I don't know. I don't
Gotta have
know,
an
because I
open
mean,
mind, dude.
there's a lot of things that got inhibited by all this like sudden COVID shit all around the world, like whether it was
Yeah.
historical,
side note.
political.
On COVID, I love that Fauci's flip flopping now and saying that it possibly could have came from the Wuhan lab, but it's like, wow,
Well, it's all
you're finally
because
getting
Orange Man
busted, and
said
now
it.
you want to come clean? Cool.
you can't agree with anything Orange Man said, you know.
Fucking COVID shit. But yeah, I think I remember something too where in this story, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm going to try to look it up here when I ask you, wasn't there something where she was concerned that when she got shut down from it, that someone else might be able to come in and take over the dig site, or somebody else was trying to come in and take over the remainder of the site? Something along those lines?
I think
I wrong on
because
that?
the digging season had run out. Yeah. So if her license expired and the digging season continued, she could basically lose. I think that's how digging rights are. That she could lose priority to it if somebody else had a digging license. But because the season ended, I think she has first rights to that site. I'm not sure
Okay.
exactly how those laws work, but they're fucking weird and dumb.
That'd suck to lose out on that to somebody else. You spent 14 years digging this shit up, and like,
I mean, truthfully, even if someone else finds it, I feel like we're at a time period where she would get credit for it.
Hopefully,
I'm not even
hopefully.
saying, and I'm saying hopefully. I'm not saying because she's a woman, you know. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
You
spend
white
14
supremacist.
years. Yeah, you spend 14 years on a site, trying to prove people wrong, because there's a lot of people who are told her she's wasting her time,
Yeah.
and she's found more shit about Cleopatra in her digs than anybody ever. So I personally think she found it, because they found like a cave that goes into a room. They don't know if it's a tomb or not, but it was like right as the digging season ended. And it's weird that they have seasons for that shit.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel that if you're that close to something like so big in history,
Oh, you push
you
through,
like
dude. You push
rules
through.
should just go throughout the fucking window. You know what I mean? Like that's a historical thing that would be great. And it says here, I mean, the how they kind of figured out that like they were on the right track. They said they found 2 mummies of high status individuals who lived in Cleopatra's era that were discovered at Taposiris Magna.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you find clear-cut evidence of something like that, like fuck the rules. Like we need this dug out.
There's actually,
But then-
I mean, I'll send it to you guys. There's actually a really good documentary following her dig up until like the very last minute. And like the shit they show what this place like supposedly looked like back in the day, fucking incredible, dude. Like it looks like a fucking like oasis. Looks fucking
I can
dope.
imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can wholeheartedly imagine. It's nuts. I like you said with those rules and seasons, like, dude, fuck that shit. We're trying to learn. Like we're trying to learn and discover things on this
Yeah.
planet. But again, like I said in our previous episode, where we are not further along in our search of the galaxy and all these things as a society, it's like we're too destructive and controlling that it's just fucking it all up.
Yeah. It's almost like digging seasons give governments enough time to swoop in and take all the evidence.
Exactly.
I was gonna say it gives them enough time to go and rebury the stuff or something, but could be both. They come in, take a little bit, and rebury shit. Because
It's
it
like-
definitely is weird. Like it's really weird to have digging seasons like that.
It's like playing hide and seek. You know, it's like, up, time's up. All right, now everyone go re-hide. All right,
Yeah.
close your
I
eyes.
wonder if there is like I mean, I'm not saying that there is, but just like speculative, like governments know where certain shit is, and they're like, "Fuck, this bitch is getting pretty damn close."
Oh yeah, no, they definitely do.
No, it's like anything else. Like Nick always brings up, you know, when I said certain things and he was like suppression or eradication, you know, it's always like to suppress or eliminate. And you could even go back to stuff like the Crusades back in the day. You know, the Crusades were to eliminate everything that wasn't what they were going with. You know, it was just kill and destroy, and there's just what happens. And I think you're right. There is some control with the whole seasons thing. And I will say I do believe part of it, when you look at some of that stuff, they say that there is wear and tear or instability if you continually fuck with something that old, that you have to give it time to like reset or like naturally just like be left alone, because if you mess with it too much, it could destroy or cave in or cause problems. I get that, but not to the level that they do it at.
Yeah. It's like
And I'm not an archaeologist, so I'm just blowing smoke out my mouth by saying that's just my opinion. So don't quote me on it, but that's just what I think.
Yeah. A place I feel like archaeologist, and that's always what I wanted to be when I grew up, was an archaeologist. That's what I for sure thought I was going to do.
I can tell
Totally
by what you're
missed
into.
the ball on that. But like the Amazon and like the Sahara Desert are areas that are just not even like, there's no archaeology going on there. There's no excavation, and it's like we've found evidence in the Amazon that there's shit, but like only like 8% of the Amazon's been searched or something like that. It's a super low percentage.
Yeah, really low number.
And it's like, why aren't like we pursuing that instead of just knocking down all these fucking trees? Let's go and see what we could be missing. And I think it was Hancock who said there's traces of people that they found there that had like Australian, certain things that only Australians have in their bones or some shit like that. I forget what it was, but it was something that traced them to like the Australian continent. And it was like, how could they be that far away with that? Like, we didn't know that they had boats way back when these people were supposedly dated to. So like, how, like, were they from the ice age and they literally just traveled across the ice? Like,
yeah, they melted and floated that way.
yeah, there's like so many questions that just aren't answered, and nobody talks about it or cares to do more research into it.
Yeah, it's real weird. And it's weird how things are dismissed. Going back to that, like we were talking earlier about how just things can be dismissed out of hand. No questions asked. It's just shot down like you're crazy, and it's for one to ask questions or just bring up possibilities for people to just discuss. Because some of these people, it's weird too. Because like I know we keep talking about Graham Hancock, but he really is like, he's really good on a lot of this stuff, and he has definitely expanded my interest on a lot of things and my knowledge just in general on a lot of stuff. Because the dude's really knowledgeable. But for someone who doesn't make a strong assertion of like, say, aliens or anything like this, he just says there's more to the story really that we need to do digging on. He's somebody who's scrutinized heavily. And it's like, this guy isn't really putting forward radical like things. It's pretty tame, like, hey, there's a lot of weird stuff going on, we should just do some more digging and find out more of the story. And it's just just dismissing things outright, it just makes no sense.
Yeah, he always uses the term lost civilization. He doesn't say aliens. He doesn't say any. He doesn't say advanced. He just says there's a lost civilization out there that we just don't know anything about. I mean, fuck, I got this book literally sitting here on my desk that I'm reading right now. It's called America Before: The Key to Our Lost Civilization. Like, and there's evidence in here that there's civilizations that happened in America, like I was just telling you about in the Amazon and stuff, that just aren't talked about. Like, there's a whole lost civilization that we know nothing about.
It's funny you say that, because when we were talking about the stuff you're looking at the Amazon, I was looking it up real quick, and as of December of last year, it said that laser and satellite technology revealed more than 35 villages. Billions of lasers shot from a helicopter flying over the Brazilian Amazon rainforest have detected a vast network of long, abandoned circular and rectangular shaped villages dating back all the way to the 1300 to 1700s from a new study.
Yeah.
Just as last year. And they don't know anything about it other than like they see it.
Yeah.
But they're abandoned. And it's like, well, from the 1300s to the 1700s, like, who the fuck were they?
Yeah. There's a
or
place,
what was it?
There's a place, I believe it's in Mississippi or Alabama. I forget what it was. But Graham Hancock talks about that all the time. That it's kind of like in Ohio, we have the serpent mounds, and it's like how, like, what, that has to be man-made. There's no way somebody just did that at the end of these mounds. And the mounds on the summer solstice, it literally points right to where the sun sets on the summer solstice.
Yep,
The
going there this year. I want to check that shit out for sure.
We're going there this year, right?
Yeah, June 20th. That's
20th.
that Sunday. June 20th, that Sunday.
We're going.
And yeah, definitely.
And we're gonna.
When I seen that, I was like, yeah, we
the
got to check that out. We might as well. It's in Ohio, so.
Yeah. I mean, the serpent mounds, I recommend looking up. Even Hancock said it's one of the greatest things he's ever seen. And this is a guy who's traveled the world.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, he's quoted talking about it by saying that he would like to explore the possibility that these mounds are just the more recent incarnations of much more ancient prehistoric structures, and that they incorporate knowledge from an earlier time in civilization, much the same way that historical ancient Egyptian monuments from around 5,000 years ago are less also incorporate a legacy of much older knowledge and memory of the first time.
Yeah.
Talking about the search for the lost white race in America.
For them to build a structure like that that lines up perfect with the sun, where the snake's mouth is literally swallowing the sun like that,
yeah.
and
On this
it's supposed to be
particular
just
day,
Native
every
Americans that
year.
weren't that advanced.
Yeah. Always on the summer solstice. Always perfect.
Yeah.
And there's structures
And then,
like that all around the world.
what's the other story too, where we were just talking about, I think a couple months ago, of the place in the Grand Canyon where they found possible evidence of ancient Egyptians visiting, because there's like hieroglyphs or
There's
something in this
hieroglyphics in
cave.
there, and there's an I'm not going to call it ancient, but there's an Indian depiction in one of the caves of what looks to be the Ark of the Covenant. Like literally, like if you look at it, you're like, that's the Ark of the Covenant. And it's like, how do Native American Indians know what that would look like whatsoever?
And that's where I go back to talking when I had that point where I was like, maybe that was alien technology. Because you tie that in with how humans, like what happens to them after they're by it for too long. And then now you're bringing up that other civilizations have something that looks exactly similar, when it's like there's no way that they could have, well, that we know of could have known.
Yeah.
It's like, it's fucking weird.
That's why I think there's more evidence, though, to even just say that I think the world was a lot more connected than they tell us it was.
Right.
I think it's possible that maybe they didn't have it themselves, but they could have had people they sent over to Egypt or wherever, not Egypt for the Covenant, but over in that area, the Middle East and all that. It would have been Egypt, because they led the
the Red Sea.
They walked, they left with the Ark of the Covenant. My bad, I'm getting a little confused here, but it's like, I think there's more to the theory of the world being more interconnected than they actually tell us. They say that none of these civilizations were ever supposed to talk or anything like that, but you find similar things, again, where the pyramids are built, that latitude and longitude where that meets, and then Serpent Mound, where that was built, where at a specific latitude and longitude, the sun comes down and the snake's head swallows up the sun. There's a lot of other structures around the world too that line up perfect with certain parts when the sun's certain parts of the year when the sun's setting.
Stonehenge is one of those, isn't it?
It's very weird. What's that?
Stonehenge, isn't Stonehenge one of those? Isn't there there's like a square in the one Stonehenge and a triangle in the other, and at a certain point the sun lines up perfectly through those? I think it's on the summer solstice as well, if I'm not mistaken. And it's like, how? Huh.
Yeah, and then they tell you that there's no way these civilizations were interconnected at all, but you see similar things running through each of them. Where, again, that's why I buy into the theory too, where I think things were a lot more interconnected than they say they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says at Stonehenge on the summer solstice, the sun rises behind the heel stone in the northeast part of the horizon, and its first rays shine into the heart of Stonehenge.
Yeah, exactly. That's crazy. Like, what? And then, like, you think of like the Mayans and how popular their pyramids are. I mean, their pyramids weren't structurally as well built as the Egyptian, but there's some transfer of knowledge there, because I don't want to sound like I'm shitting on the Mayans, but everything else besides that is really, like, just technologically, there's so much of a gap between the Egyptians and the Mayans. It's like, how did the Mayans find out like that was the way to go, building a pyramid like that? If that makes sense. Because they truthfully didn't have the tool. I mean, they lived off what was around them. They truthfully didn't have the tools necessary to, I'm not even going to say come up with that, because sure, somebody could have came up with that idea, but it's a strange coincidence.
Yep.
It is, because you got to think of the probability of how many different ways, if you were to do a math equation on the variables of how many different ways they could have made something, and they just landed on that exact one.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never understood that, and I don't believe that it's a coincidence. There's something of deeper in that.
Yeah.
For it to be the same.
Who knows? I mean, I would love to know what happened. I just would love to know what happened. It blows my mind to think about, like, did civilization here get so advanced that literally we were visited by aliens and they shut that shit down real quick? Like, are we getting to that point now? Like, there's always reports of like UFOs over nuclear power plants and, energy plants, and just shutting the power down in that area. Like, are we getting to that point again where they're just about to be like, yeah, you guys are getting a little too close to shit that could like affect us where we're at, wherever the fuck they are, so we got to put a stop to it?
Are you talking like a global reset situation?
Not necessarily like a global reset.
Just we would destroy ourselves and emit so much radiation with our nuclear power that it would start affecting like the galaxy and shit, possibly.
Like, so like they're like, okay, you guys are getting to that point again where you guys are gonna hurt yourselves and you're gonna hurt everybody out here that lives out here. So we are just gonna shut you guys down. So yeah, I guess kind of like a global reset. I mean, if you look back in history, the Earth, like they always talk about global warming, the Earth like kind of resets itself every so often. And we've gone through what, 2 ice ages? I mean,
yeah, and what
kind of
was
fucking weird?
5 major extinctions?
Yeah,
I was just about to bring that up.
It's just when. I mean, could that be the situation?
It's quite possible.
People say this simulation. Like, could we be a simulation for other beings who are like, all right, well, we got close to creating something, but these people fucked it up as well. So we got to reset, and we'll keep some. We'll give them some knowledge to build some things and see where they go. Try again.
Or maybe that's the theory of how the Mayans and the Egyptians knew to build the same thing without communicating, because at one point they had done that already in a previous reset, and then when they got reset, they started back at that.
That's kind of, I'm not going to say that's exactly what Graham Hancock is saying, but when he talks about like a transfer of knowledge, like where there's survivors that told these hunters and farmers who survived whatever cataclysmic event happened, like gave them the knowledge, and this is how we do this is how you create a tool to make this, like, and it just grew from there.
There's only one way we're going to find out. We need to get some ayahuasca.
I really, really want to do some. I can't even explain to you how badly I want to do it.
Yeah,
in a heartbeat. I would so down. I don't care if I would like mentally damage myself forever if I had answers. I
don't think you would, dude. I mean, I know.
Yeah.
I know so many researchers and stuff who take it for that purpose. And they,
I'm looking at
all they talk about is wanting to do it again. Like,
well, I'm looking at it from the lens of like how they depict it in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the Indiana Jones movie. How she was like, I want to know, and the alien's like, oh, you want to? Yeah, I'll give you all the information. Fucking melts her melts her whole mind because she can't handle it.
I'd be a little freaked out about what's gonna come visit me, dude.
It'll be a little weird, but we got to do it
together as a squad.
So, there's only one way to find out, man. But I'm telling you right now, I'm doing it in a locked room.
You don't want to do it outside in the woods, dude?
No.
Yeah. Nicholas, no. How about that?
No.
See, what I would want to do, going off of our theory or what you talked about earlier about 50 people and they all had the same thing, is I'd all want to be in like separate rooms, separate like situations, and then come back and see if we had the same thing. Like write it down, write everything that you had down, and then we would compare and see like what it was like.
I would want my first time to be with a group just to.
Me too.
Me too. What'd you say, Cody?
Me too. I'd want to do it with a group.
Yeah. Then once you kind of get your feet wet, I wouldn't mind doing that after a couple times. That way you could really test out like what's really going on then.
Yeah, you know what to expect. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
You got to test the waters, Adam.
Yeah. But yeah, no, definitely not out in the woods. That ain't really a woods type of deal.
No, thank you. Last thing I need is going from trying to connect with something that's going to speak out to me to just freaking out and thinking I'm in Blair Witch. Yeah. I don't need that. But that would be life changing to have that experience and see what these people saw when they did that. I don't know. This whole conversation,
that it's demonized now, and back then it was just like a normal like a religious or ritual thing that was just done normally.
Yep.
That ain't no different than when alcohol was an illegal, demonized thing, and then they were just like, "Yeah, fuck it, give it."
Yeah. If I'm
But
not
that's because
mistaken,
people.
Santa Claus and mushrooms were like connected in some way back in the day.
Yeah, the whatever the one mushroom, I forget the name of
Yeah.
is it the Amanita mushroom or some
It might
crap
be.
like that?
The red
The
one or
the
whatever.
colors of it
Yeah.
are supposedly like what helped spawn like the story of Santa Claus or some shit like
Yeah.
that.
You laugh, but that's real.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because I believe it. Like it's very believable.
But like now,
after
that's
everything
just like
we
not okay.
everything we just talked about, I'm like, yep, that 100%.
Yeah, the Amanita muscaria.
Yeah, Amanita.
If you look up images of it, you could see it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of a Christmassy looking shroom.
Maybe that's how they talk to Santa.
Could be.
They say too that that's how the story of Jesus Christ came to be and all that, and that whole story.
Yep.
Just a bunch of drugged up people.
Think about it. Clockwork elves. Santa has elves working for him. I mean, come on now. These aren't coincidences.
I'm interested to see the comments on the drug discussion of what people think, because I know tons of people have different experiences with different things and talk about, speaking to somebody or someone outreaching to them and getting the answers or seeing into the future or, whatever. And I don't know. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on if you've ever experienced something like that, because that would be crazy to hear like actual an account of that.
Yeah.
But is there any other big stuff as far as like this previous history things you guys want to hit on before we wrap this up?
No, I think we covered it pretty well. I mean, I'm excited for June 1st, obviously.
I'm
hoping we're not let down.
Whoa.
I'm hoping that we get something, but I have a strong feeling that they're going to push this back.
I do too.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of hype around it right now on social media.
There's what?
A lot of hype around it on social media right now.
Oh yeah,
That's like that first drop.
That's like that TikTok I sent you guys, where it was like kind of making fun of the religious aspect of things, where it's like, everyone calm down, everyone fucking calm down.
Yeah.
It's like religious people trying to like figure out what to say now the alien first, and they're just freaking the fuck out. Which I'm not making fun of anyone religious out there that is watching or listening. That's your prerogative. I have full respect for that. It's just funny to me because I'm not someone who believes. So just take that for what it is. But yeah, I think that was some very interesting things we talked about. Let us know what you think as far as like a lot of the historical stuff, because I know previously we went into more strictly aliens and UFO related, our government and whatnot. We just discussed a lot about the historical aspects of things, civilizations, technologies, what was made, how it was made. Could it have been something else? Could it just been us? Who knows? Obviously, you heard our opinions on it. I would love to hear yours, so definitely leave comments in the YouTube link here in this video. Like it if you liked it. If you didn't like it, dislike it. And we'd just love to hear your feedback either way. We got some great comments on the last one, some in-depth paragraphs. We loved reading those, so thank you. And also, thank you for the correction on the astrology. It is astronomy. So apologize for that, but when you're talking about so many crazy things here, sometimes the wordage
and
just...
you're drinking.
Yeah, well, usually
sometimes it's a long week.
Yeah, sometimes it's a long drink. I'm actually drinking carbonated water that's flavored like watermelon with caffeine in it today. So I'm being good.
Seltzer.
Hell's Seltzer.
Gordon Ramsay's new alcoholic beverage. It's pretty good.
Yeah, hit us up, Gordon. We'd love a shout out.
Yeah.
Definitely drink that shit on an episode.
I'm an idiot sandwich, Gordon.
But that's going to wrap it up for here. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you very much. Again, like I said in the beginning, make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube page. Follow us on our social medias on Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, wherever you love listening to your favorite podcast, Anchor, Google, iTunes, anywhere you like to listen to them. And hit that notification bell so that way you don't miss these, because when June 1st hits, I'm going to see if we can on that day. If not, as close to that day, depending on what information we're probably going to cover it once we get enough to actually cover from what they release. If they release, we'll keep you updated. So keep an eye out for that. And other than that, we will see you next time.
Deuces.
See you.